I'm just starting this new thing now where um, I'm recording the show on another microphone for the podcast, and I had this thing happen where I forget to start recording on the other device when I go live. Um, Give me a minute here. Things keep changing on the show. Things keep growing and improving. I can't even keep up with it. All right, so I'm gonna try this again. I'm gonna hit it again. Another week, another week in HBAR, Hedera. There we go. Now we're starting. Now we're off to the races. Um, you know what? Is it all coming together? That's what I want to know. Because, HBAR, the price is down, of course. We saw that little ride that we had in Dovu recently. That was cool. I think there's another token right now called Grelf from Warlock or Cretes. But even though things are kind of down a little bit, and then we've got all this, there's Silvergate, or what is it? Yeah, Silvergate Bank, and then we've got all the different regulatory stuff happening. Don't even get me started on Gary. Everyone's upset with Gary right now. Gary of the SEC. It's weird because he was at some kind of committee hearing, and he basically said that Bitcoin is the only crypto asset that isn't a security because it is, I guess he's arguing it's the most decentralized. And it's funny because he said something to the effect of, it's not like with Bitcoin, there's 6 people in the middle, but there kind of is. We've talked about this before on the show, of people kind of arguing that Ethereum or Bitcoin is more decentralized to Hedera Hashgraph. And you could talk about false equivalencies, but I mean, Mance, from Swirls Labs said, it's what do you say? It's a fallacy to say that. And I have to agree. I mean, of course, there's thousands and thousands of, nodes on Ethereum and Bitcoin respectively, but I mean, how many of them actually are doing votes? How many of them are participating in the governance? Right? Where are those nodes? Most of them are on Amazon. And there's I guess there's maybe a handful, maybe 6, maybe a dozen. So there's so many things around that. I don't know what's going on with Gary. I don't know if he knows what he's talking about. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But there was a great point made. Bitcoin was they got a first mover advantage. It's really what it comes down to. But is it all coming together? That's what I keep asking myself, because we're seeing when we go back into the HBAR bubble, the Hedera hashverse, things seem pretty interesting and pretty promising. I mean, I brought this up before, a trend that I've seen highlighted, many, many, many times over, I'd say probably the last 6 months. People noting that the HBAR price keeps going down, right, along with the rest of the market, but the value on the network keeps going up. And recently, of course, in January, we saw the, first quote unquote step function with Avery Dennison, Atma.io, mainnet rocking at 500 TPS. Woohoo. And then we keep seeing all this other news, right? We talked or maybe not last week, maybe it was the week before, the Hedera, social media account, Twitter account, following Sony, quickly unfollowing. We've talked about MasterCard breadcrumbs. The Coupon Bureau should be coming live. And then we've got all these other things, that are happening. And to me, we'll talk about a lot of it today, but, that's the question I was asking myself, is just seeing all this news coming in, reflecting on the things that have happened. And also ETH Denver, this is we see Hedera at these kind of conferences and events. Last we saw them at Davos at the Hedera House. And, it just, things definitely start to feel a lot more fleshed out, and the numbers are there, right? DeFi, NFT ecosystem, all these different things. It really does, I'm just thinking, is it happening? Is this actually happening? Could a lot of this stuff come to fruition this year? Maybe. And we're live on Twitter Spaces with another week in Hashgraph to unpack. Let's take a quick look at what we're talking about today. We got Brian, the HBAR Barian. We'll talk about him. Of course, Hedera, ETH Denver. We got Hedera, the network, setting some transaction records. We're going to talk about WiPay and WiCoin. What else is going on here? A little bit of Atma.io stuff, a little bit of breadcrumbs from the January council meeting, the governing council. We got HashPack news, Citadel wallet news, Hashgraph.io news, Dovu news. Going to be Rob Allen. In charge of the Sustainable Impact Fund at the HBAR Foundation. His nickname is something like the Shark. I know the HBAR Bull has a segment on his weekly show with Rob. Shark Tank or Shark Corner something. Rob's got a lot of interesting things happening. Also, too, someone on the Hedera community subreddit put together a really good research post. Hash Axis, they did something AI related. We're going to talk a little bit about some scams and stuff happening in the Hedera ecosystem, because we got to get ready, folks. We got to stay safe. Got some breadcrumbs, some saucer swap things, some FSCO, Fresh Supply Co. MasterCard stuff. Maybe he'll tune into the show. I don't know. Might be listening. If I see him tuning in, I'll bring him up. But yeah, we got a lot of really cool news, breadcrumbs, rumors, all that good stuff. And yeah, is it all coming together? I don't know. We'll find out. I mean, usually I go off on a bit of a diatribe at the beginning of the show, but honestly, we got too much to talk about. I don't have any time for guests or anything. There's too much news. Had some people reach out. Actually, I'm working on an interesting guest, that I think a lot of people are going to be curious about, that I'm kind of excited about. Hopefully it works out. He's in Dubai right now, so I think he's sleeping. But when he's home, see if I can get him on. And with that, good evening from Ottawa, Canada, everyone. My name is Brandon Davenport, and I'm a developer, artist, and creative agency owner at Dirksen & Davenport Incorporated. And like all of you, I'm a Hashgraph enthusiast. It is March 5th, 2023, 7 p.m. Eastern. I got a Diet Pepsi. I'm rocking out. I ran out of cream for my coffee, so I was like, what has caffeine in it? Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. Welcome to Hashgraph News and Rumors, episode 67. Is it all coming together? This is a weekly show that covers the top stories related to Hedera, HBAR, and everything in between, broadcast live on Twitter Spaces every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, and made available on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify and Apple Music, which is cool. Every Monday. Those go up every Monday, so the next day. Get all the info you need about the show and listen to past episodes at itsbrandond.com/HBAR. If you're listening live, check out the Twitter thread pinned to the top of the Spaces. Take a deeper dive into each story. Also, to everybody listening, take a moment now. Share the Spaces. Let your friends know you're listening. The more the merrier. Get it out there. You can also click the little comment button on the bottom right to the Spaces. Ask a question or share something interesting that listeners might like to know, and I'll talk about it. And also, too, I mean, this is a reminder to join the Hashgraph enthusiast Twitter community. It is a great way for Hashgraph newbies and early adopters to connect, team up, share knowledge, insights. The link to join that's in the thread. And, the show continues to grow from hundreds of listeners to thousands, and that's because of people like you guys take the time to tune in. And it's probably one of my favorite things to do every week. If you're interested in becoming a supporter of the show, please consider making an HBAR donation. It helps me continually add value to the Hashgraph community and keeps the show ad-free. You can send a donation to enthusiast.hbar. using your Hedera wallet. Brought to you by listeners like you. I see David's listening too. This is really exciting. I'm going to bring him up. I mean, I usually go over, the price of HBAR and the price of this coin and the price of that coin. But, things aren't so hot right now. Things aren't super happy or super exciting. I mean, we can take a quick look. I think what's worth taking a look at though, because nobody wants to talk about the price of HBAR right now. Do we? Do we really want to get into that? Something cool though, is, the mainnet hit a new record. 60 million transactions in one day. I think that was yesterday, the 4th. Shout out to the mainnet. We're at an average of 640 transactions, which is up considerably. I mean, we did see a dip there. Let me go to the bigger graph. Yeah, we saw that dip, that started on the 24th. And we were figuring it was kind of like a weekend thing. But it lasted until the 3rd. So it kind of went through the week, which was kind of weird, but we're back up, and we're back up stronger than ever. Really close to 1,000 transactions per second, which is crazy. And everything else, time to finality is under 5 seconds. We're rocking and rolling. Things are looking good. But I've got David up here from Fresh Supply. And there's a lot of interesting things, happening around this use case. For folks that are kind of out of the loop, FSCO, Fresh Supply, they were running on MasterCard Provenance blockchain, which was a product from MasterCard. It was a really great product for a lot of these use cases, and MasterCard's kind of sunset that product. So FSCO is kind of like, what do we, we've got this infrastructure, we've got this application layer, and we've got these payment rails for all sorts of different things like MasterCard, and we kind of need a ledger to support that. And they were looking around and they saw Hedera, and for a couple of weeks I've been talking about it, but I haven't had the pleasure of chatting with David about this. So David, welcome to the show, and I'm really excited to kind of hear what you guys are working on. I don't know quite what you can talk about yet, but maybe if you can tell everyone a little bit about yourself and maybe FSCO, and what does all this MasterCard stuff mean? What is it all about?
Hey, thanks for having me. So yeah, I'm in the office. It's 10 a.m. in Australia. So it's not a Sunday night. So first off, thank you for having me. So again, there are limitations to what we can share. Effectively, why HBAR, then I'll launch into what is FSCO, why HBAR. The adult in the room, stability of costs allows us to have a huge amount of scalability, writing immense amounts of metadata for primarily financial outcomes, right? So what does Fresh Supply Co do? So we do asset tokenization, primarily in agri-food and commodity, as well as cross-border value chains, supply chains. Yeah. So what are the things? Where are they? Classification of different events and event types, from a create to an aggregate, disaggregate, to outtaking, to different things like that, right? Is a consignment at its point of origin? Is it a port? Does it have 120 days till its till its maturity date? So what are the things that are being financed? Those having specific conditions, and then using those conditions to objectively trigger payments. So that's the future, man, right? So primarily for offline industries, large industries, commodities, there's data availability. That's an issue for lenders, right? So there's information that exists on, call it spreadsheets, ERPs inside of organizations. The technological shift you should be excited about is we're taking that information about industrial scale food production, and we're making that available with the right amount of security to financiers, right? So that's a hard thing to do. So now triggering payments. So there's the asset side, and then there's the future of money, effectively. So being able to trigger payments, right? Saying the conditions have been met for this type of commodity, for this type of trade, and then sending that off on a range of different payment rails. So card, again, why should you be excited? Why is, any HBAR holder, or why are we excited? We have worked with a range of different traditional finance, as well as alternative payment instruments. So triggering payment from an account, right? Saying, hey, lender, pay this bank account, to using card as a financing instrument. I believe we're amongst the best globally doing that, using card as a financing instrument. The interesting piece here is that that is completely uncorrelated to interest rates. So there's a little bit of payments black magic. And then lastly, DeFi. Why is that exciting? So again, I say I'm in the language and communications business. What are the things that are being produced, and what stage in the life cycle are they? Are they specific? Are they the right specification, right maturity? And they were bought for X, value was added, and was there an uplift in value? That's one side. But the exciting part is that's where you hear things around your ANZs, your different banks. So again, we've done historically and continue to do work with Commonwealth Bank, so that's the largest bank in Australia. Around the largest supplier early payment on card program in agribusiness in Australia, right? So being able to bridge new infrastructure, so the ledger, right? So one party owes another party. Party A owes party B. Party B may be a Walmart, a China Vanguard group, or a large off-taker for some type of commodity. Right, party A was party B, and saying there's a dollar value for that transaction, and being able to give liquidity to that, or to be able to say, okay, these are the downstream cash flows that are going to come to this organization. Brandon sold me, X amount of Angus steer for $2 or $3 million. In call it 45 days, 60 days, he's going to get paid back, right? So we know that, what is the credit quality of the counterparty. So David is going to pay because David is a, $120 million revenue a year company that has historic offtake of X. So being able to describe these things, what are the things that are associated with a commercial trade? What is the dollar value of said trade? Being able to describe those, that's where, again, fungible and non-fungible tokens become important, because those obligations persist on ledger and, again, managed with the right level of security. We believe that's the future of securitization. Not we believe, it will be the future of securitization, right? And the ability to write that in a stable way and write a huge amount of metadata around how was it paid, who was paid, AML, KYC, what's the currency, trade corridor, maturity, etc., right? So short-term working capital, and then longer term, which could potentially extend into bonds. That's not what we're doing right now, but that's what we're focused on, right? So that's, there's a lot of complexity, but again, let me try to re-summarize that. We describe things permanently on ledger and manage them. We've, co-innovated with MasterCard around classification of event types, primarily in the agri-food space, but especially in the agribusiness and cross-border space. What are the things, and what are the commercial obligations? What is the financial obligation between two parties? So if you can imagine being able to say there was an invoice number for, again, 2, 3, not a huge amount, $2 or $3 million, linked to 200 of these specific assets that we can represent on chain. There could be X amount of tons, hundreds of tons, right? Being able to tie the two together, that's the future, man, right? That's happening to the kind of agri, food, and commodity space right now. Yeah.
That's huge. That's exciting. So what you're saying is a lot of these different transactions and movements on the supply chain side with food, like those will be recorded on the ledger publicly?
Well, there will be a blend, right? So there'll be fungible and non-fungible events. That's where security and information hierarchy is really important. But being able to say, okay, Brandon sold, again, David X amount of cattle. It was financed by Bank X. Now, Bank X no longer wants that on their balance sheet. They want to securitize that and send it to Credit Suisse. That's why it's interesting, right? Being able to discreetly say these are the specific assets financed against that are tied to a financial. They exist in two domains, but they run in parallel, right? So there's the asset layer, then there's the financial layer, right? Being able to tie the two, that's where there's novelty, right? And so you can very quickly query what is that thing. So that's what we did on MasterCard, right? And that conditions have been met to trigger payment.
Fascinating. Okay, so then the other thing is, and I've heard you say this before in an HBAR Foundation space, is that like when we look at the MasterCard side, like there's going to be payments made via MasterCard recorded on the Hedera ledger.
Yeah, man. The payment trigger. It's like that's
wow.
Partly why you should be excited. So once we've launched for ourselves, that same capability is going to be available to organizations that want to use event-based, so like pay attention to the specific wording. It's event-based payment triggering, right? So you're capturing data at source. Is the grain the right quantity? Is it the right level of protein or moisture? Did it leave port or is it waiting to be shipped? Is it in storage and where is it? All that wealth of information, you can't write that to, you couldn't afford to write that permanently on Ledger, on other chains. We also like the positioning, the adult in the room. So that information should be made permanent and persist on Ledger, right? So, and then as a result of that, we can objectively say conditions precedent or precedent for the payment being made, right specification, right amount, right person, right? It's going to finance X amount of truckloads of beef that are going to Erewhon or Whole Foods versus, they're not missiles going to some suspect arms dealer, right? So this information is useful and it creates a massive efficiency in both domestic and global trade on the production as well as finished good trade side.
Right. So now you guys used to be using the, MasterCard Provenance blockchain product. And I'm curious, like, was it a situation where you were currently using the Provenance blockchain project and were already kind of, looking over at Hedera like, oh, that's really interesting and kind of moving? Or was it a situation where where Provenance was sunset and you kind of had to look for an alternative?
It's probably more of, it's both, right? So number one, Provenance, and I've got nothing but good things to say about the MasterCard team, right? Especially shout out to Leandro who headed that project, and to Debbie as well as the enterprise partnerships team, both in Singapore and London. Nothing but good things to say about them. But number one, it's a private permissioned ledger, right? And MasterCard's core business is not in running layer ones. Let's just be frank, right? So it was an experiment around what it could facilitate. What are the outcomes? And certainly event-based payment triggering, where we're pulling huge amounts of data from different points in the supply chain and then committing those to, we have our own layer, our own middleware layer, and then committing that critical data to Ledger, right? That's not MasterCard's core business. Their core customers are banks.
Right. That makes total sense. And it's interesting too, because I know that when you go back through the story of Hedera and Swirlds, even, before Hedera was launched as a public network, the Hashgraph consensus algorithm was a product of Swirlds, and Swirlds' initial vision was to create, a permission private ledger for companies. And then now, obviously they pivoted and we have a public network. So it's really interesting to kind of see those different pathways that could have been taken. And now with Hedera being a public network, it opens up all these different laneways. And you're like, one thing that was great from a recent tweet that FSCO tweeted out, you guys said, quote, FSCO Central Authority. The stack ledger layer is Hedera. The middleware and application layer is Fresh Supply Co. It triggers payments on multiple rails plus MasterCard ecosystem. Native integration with GetSpend. So, from what I'm looking at, like you were mentioning, other organizations or companies would be able to leverage that application layer you guys, that middleware application layer you guys are running, or am I correct in that?
Yes, I can't 100% give you, I'm just getting text. I can't 100% give you the specific details, but yes.
You're getting texts, they're like, shut up, don't say anymore.
So, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So that capability. So if there are different businesses that want to use, that are going to use Hedera and want to trigger payments from card, again, like financial grade payment triggering, like you go tap and pay at your 7-Eleven or at Louis Vuitton, or to pay your fuel bill at like a fleet level. That same, hey, who is this? What's the identity of this person? Is this the right asset? Do they have money in their account? And have they met whatever the requirements are? Those events will be written on Ledger. That's what we do.
That's fascinating.
Then triggering that payment. So we're not screwing around with like, oh yeah, it's a science. No, it's the exact same good to pay payment instruction files as you would have on MasterCard. So we will open that up. So if you're on Hedera and there is a payments use case, we can trigger the card. There'll be a whole range of different, real world functionality. Because say what you will about card, but card's accepted everywhere, right?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, it has to be asked as well, just because, when we flip back with the kind of creation story of, Hedera and Swirls and everything, a lot of the concepts for the governing council and everything like that was based off of a book written by the founder of Visa. And so obviously, Visa pops into my mind. You guys have MasterCard, and you also mention it triggers on multiple rails plus MasterCard. Like, do you see Visa payments or other major credit card payments coming to this ledger?
No comment.
Right. Okay. No problem. That's okay. That's okay.
Who from Visa's in the HBAR ecosystem? Message me.
Right. Okay. I hear you. That's the fun thing about this show is I don't do a lot of I don't think I've done a pre-prepared interview ever on the show. So I always appreciate people taking the time and hopping up and everything like that. So I totally respect that. And then the last question before I just continue on with the show, and I really appreciate your time, is one thing that always pops into my mind is when you look at companies like Starbucks or any of these food companies or beverage companies that have to build trust with their customers to ensure that your product is organic or fair trade or what have you. There's a lot of marketing dollars and a lot of work that goes into building that trust versus, hypothetical use cases I've thought in my own mind of ways that customers can look that up on the ledger. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, we started in that, right? We started in that space, but around sustainability credentialing, right? You don't want to add to a cost base of a business, right? But around sustainability credentialing, we directly work with the national government of a large Middle Eastern country for that their imports is sustainable. So effectively, a passport that the food that is imported, right, meets a specific criteria, and what are the certifications around that? Are they an NFT that's applied to the supplier organization when they import goods that automatically expires around X point of time? I don't believe the dollar value at this stage is in the consumer side. It will be around probably transaction level offsetting for card purchases. You will purchase something at Starbucks, $40, and a percent of that can go towards carbon offsetting. Like, I think that'll happen, right? And it's happening in the background, but probably less around the consumer side. We have a lot more scale on the B2B side and government side.
Right. That's really interesting because that's the thing in my mind, just because, I have a, branding marketing agency and stuff like that. And a big shift that I see coming up is these millions and millions and millions of dollars that major brands and even smaller brands spend to build that trust with customers and, convince them that the products that they're purchasing from these brands are in fact truly what they're presented as versus that customer just being able to easily look it up on an immutable ledger. You start to go, well, all of those millions and millions of marketing dollars are going to start to be freed up. They're maybe not going to have to do that. A customer isn't going to have to trust.
There's a big movement. There's a big movement around MRV, right? So measure, report, verify. So these rolling validations that a company, this is the footprint of a company, this is the footprint of a product. Is it offset, or if it's not, if they're buying offsets, right? Or as we would call it, insetting into products, that needs granularity. So I'm not going to say too much, but the same infrastructure that can track assets moving through the supply chain across various transformations at scale can do this exact same thing about offsetting to object level, right? Or asset level. That could be banks, if you're listening, or businesses that are saying, okay, well, there are 30 people at this branch. There are 25 in this branch. It's a 5-star energy rated building. The footprint of that is X, or we want to offset all of the retail, the footprint of the retail spaces. That all needs to be tracked by scalable infrastructure, right? So I'm not saying just about the generation of the credits or just the tokenization of the credits, which is one piece. It's about the commercial application, the engagement, and the asset level insetting. So again, that requires some level of sophistication. So that will be a thing. That's going to be a multi-billion. It is already a multi-billion-dollar thing. It's going to become tens of billions.
Well, David, I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's rare for executives, for kind of like organizations like yours, just hopping on a Twitter Spaces like mine to talk about this stuff, because it's big stuff. But I call this Spaces. It is all coming together, because I feel like it might be.
One more comment. If the price is down, that doesn't really, I bought 40,000 HBAR, more than 40,000 HBAR, right? When it went down. So, that's an opportunity, right? All I did was I dollar cost average my cost of transactions. So it's not a bad thing. Cycles in the market are not a bad thing, right?
100%.
I just bought more for gas.
Right on. 100%. Yeah. Like that's what I've been saying. And a lot of folks have been saying for months and months and months in the ecosystem is, for more macro factors. Of course, the price of HBAR and some other assets on the token service are down, but value on the network continues to go up and up and up. So not financial advice, make of that as you will, folks. But David, that's a great point.
Well, it just decreased my cost, minimize my operating costs on gas, right?
Absolutely. Right on. Okay. This is exciting. So, let me think. So I don't want to pressure you too much to give dates or anything like that, but, you guys are doing some big stuff. I guess I'd say, is it like a soon thing that you guys are going live, or a sooner than soon? Maybe like a how soon?
Oh, within the fortnight.
Wow. Within a fortnight. Holy moly. Okay, well, sounds like I'm going to have quite a bit to talk about next week. My goodness.
Thanks, man.
Right on. Well, appreciate you, David. Thanks for coming up. Was there any, just give you a last chance here, if there's anything people should go check out or anything you wanted to mention?
Why to get excited? Again, that abstraction there between tracking assets and then triggering payments. That availability and why you should be excited, it'll be expanded across the ecosystem, and to be the bridge from an organization that is using the ledger, but then enabling that to linking assets to payments, that will be available throughout the ecosystem, and we will make it available. So it's coming. Now, I can't give you exact details on why you should be excited, but you should be excited, right? So, look, what else? I'll just leave it there. There's going to be more to come, right?
Under promise, over deliver. I love it, David. Thank you. I'll pop you down to speakers and I'll blast through the news here, but really appreciate you coming up again, man. All right, cheers, buddy. So, we've got a lot to get through, but to kick it off, we're going to talk about Brian, the H Barbarian. Who is Brian, the H Barbarian? Well, Brian, the H Barbarian is a man by the name of Brian Brooks. You may know him from such roles as the former acting comptroller of the U.S. OCC, which stands for, just waiting for the Twitter account to load up here so I can figure out what this acronym is. Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. So, big deal. And also, previously Coinbase CLO. And also too, ex-CEO of Bitfury. And Bitfury, I saw Bitfury in the headlines recently. What's going on? Is it good or bad with Bitfury? Maybe it was something else. So Brian Brooks, big deal. And he is joining, the board of the HBAR Foundation. And there's a lot of excitement around this, for quite a few reasons. And really the main thing is, he's a global policy heavyweight. And we talk about the lack of clarity with regulation. And then you look at Brian Brooks, and I also shared to the Twitter thread a video clip from YouTube that was Brian giving a presentation and answering some questions at a congressional hearing on the future of digital assets in his capacity as CEO, ex-CEO of Bitfury. And the reason I like Brian is the way that he explains crypto to folks on Capitol Hill in the US is very different from what I've seen. Got a very folksy way about him. Has a very articulate way of kind of driving a point, and has the experience, has the credentials to speak on these topics. But I think he does a really great job of talking to people in government that maybe have no clue what even Ethereum is or Bitcoin is. A quote from Brian Brooks in the HBAR Foundation article is this, quote, "Advancing responsible widespread adoption of DLT and Web3 is something I feel passionately about, and I'm thrilled to work with the talented teams across the HBAR Foundation to make this a reality. The HBAR Foundation, through a comprehensive grant program, has successfully grown awareness, accelerated access, and increased commerce in the HBAR economy by providing expert support across technology, marketing, and business development. Together, we will continue to be thought leaders and drive the industry forward to deliver the vision of making Hedera the trust layer of the internet." That, in that statement alone, he's done so many different things. And again, putting on my branding and marketing PR hat, there's a term in marketing and stuff like that called key messaging. And the key messaging is basically a breakdown of what is a brand or company or organization consistently trying to tell people. And getting your key messaging out there is really hard because it's spread across all sorts of different people, maybe saying things a different way than the other person. And key messaging is all about kind of harnessing the art of repetition to drill things into people's heads and get your point across. And Brian's statement here, where he says things like making Hedera the trust layer of the internet, like he's captured the idea of Hedera, distilled it, and given that key messaging to people. This statement that he gives in his capacity as a board member of the HBAR Foundation just shows how well he understands the Hedera ecosystem specifically. He kind of hits on all of those different points. When he says the HBAR Foundation and their grant program, growing awareness, accelerating access, expert support, blah, blah, blah. It's like he's hitting all of these things. So Brian Brooks is a incredible communicator and an expert at navigating all of these different things when it comes to policy. And the other key thing is he sits in front of high key government officials on Capitol Hill talking about these things. He's comfortable, he's plugged in, and those people listen to him, right? So having him on the board at the HBAR Foundation is big. And I mean, I was joking around too. I think Brady from Swirlds tweeted something out, and he was talking about how, how great it is. And, or no, he wasn't even talking about that. He was talking about Coinbase and buying Coinbase stock. And I was like, dude, we've got Brian Brooks, who was previously the head CLO of Coinbase, at the HBAR Foundation now, on the board. You don't think that there's going to be some interesting conversations between the foundation and Coinbase? I mean, they've got the ex-CLO of Coinbase. You don't think Brian's got friends at Coinbase? You don't think he still golfs with some Coinbase folks? You don't think he's going to tell them about how cool the HBAR Foundation is and everything Hedera's doing? Who knows, right? Because I mean, we've seen so many fascinating happenings at at Hedera and the foundation that turn out to just be really serendipitous things that happened from the past. A lot, there's a few, I think, governing council members and major use cases that started just as seeds from, connections from coworkers that used to work together at a place. So I'm just putting that out there. Really cool stuff. Shout out to Brian, the HBAR Barian. Also, too, shout out to all of the Hedera folks at ETH Denver. I mean, not only does Hedera have like a wild booth there, I mean, it's huge. They got a meeting room, they got Jenga, they got Connect 4. But I mean, we're seeing a bunch of folks from the community there. Like we've seen updates from May, we've seen updates from Patches, from Hashgraph.io. We're seeing folks like Lance from PixFi there. Like my Twitter feed is just full of people just meeting up, hanging out, talking about Hedera, talking about Hashgraph. The booth seems like it's bumping. And it's funny because this time last year, right, in kind of the winter of 2021, 2022, it was really different, right? I mean, Hedera didn't necessarily have booths at these major conferences. Really nobody knew what Hedera was. And then recently, things have made a bit of a shift. It feels like Hedera, Swirlds, the foundation have started to hit a new stride. And I'm seeing that just from the conversations that I'm hearing about and what I'm seeing in my feed. You can just tell this is definitely a well-oiled machine. And I'm sure that, next week I'll have some people on the show from ETH Denver and maybe hear some stories about that and stuff. But for now, what I'd say is if you haven't had a chance, go on Twitter. I think Hedera has been retweeting stuff. Just check out some of the stuff that Hedera is doing at ETH Denver, just as a temperature check. It's one of the other reasons why I called this spaces what it's called, right? Is it all coming together? The energy's there. It's a vibe. Also, too, WiPay had some really, really big news this week. And WiPay is launching WiCoin, which is a settlement network bringing the power of banking to the bankless in Africa and the Caribbean. So, and also, too, worth noting, EM Tech is a strategic partner for WiCoin. EM Tech, the CBDC innovation house. Also, if you want a quick overview of WiPay, there's a video also in the thread that I posted. But basically, the Caribbean is a series, of islands, and all of them have their own, currencies, and it's difficult to settle things across of those. And with WiCoin, what it's going to allow is basically a cross-border transaction settlement system, which is going to allow people to move money around all the different islands. And they've got over 50,000 websites and point of sales terminals connected across the Caribbean. And the WiCoin settlement network is going to enable people and businesses to transfer and make payments securely at a fraction of the current cost and time. This is exactly what we've been talking about. This use case is exactly what we've been talking about. We saw that remittance test between Shenhan Bank and Standard Bank last year, I guess, or maybe even 2021. Now we're seeing these come to life in a whole new way, solving real world problems, right? And this is what this is all about. The CEO of WiPay says, quote, WiCoin will reduce the resistance of doing business with Caribbean and African countries by resolving the main challenge of multi-currency correspondent banking. The Hedera network will revolutionize the settlement of payments within these territories. So this is just a, really big deal. And I'll read a little further here. Quote, over the years, settlements between the Caribbean and Africa have been burdened by inefficiencies. Now, through expertise of the WiPay team and the power of the Hedera network, we're actively resolving these issues. So that's what we're talking about, is these are real world problems being resolved in a way that serves, humanity globally, right? This is about bringing people up to speed, getting everybody the same goodies everybody else has. And folks in Africa and the Caribbean are going to be able to participate in commerce and banking in a whole new way. And when you have everybody leveraging these new technologies, right? These folks are the innovators. These folks are the early adopters. And they're going to show, the confused, right, banking system and regulatory system in America, and I'd say Canada as well, the country I'm in, what's going on? What's good? Right? I want to have this kind of stuff here, but it's the folks that have real problems that need to be solved that are solving it. And Hedera seems to be the key that's unlocking that. So, this is huge. WiPay's huge news. And although it's not a huge network, right? We look at the strategic partners like EM Tech. We look at the concept, right? We look at the fact that all these people on all these different islands with different currencies are going to be able to purchase this WiCoin, which is pegged to the US dollar because a lot of trade is done in the US dollar in these areas. It unlocks so many things. It takes these dozens and dozens of wallets that a lot of these people use and can start to consolidate these things. It creates a better customer experience. It creates a better experience for businesses. And quite frankly, you look at these innovations and it's just incredible. In my mind, when I look at countries where you'll have new cities being developed and new infrastructure being laid out, they're not necessarily building power grids and all this kind of stuff. They're going straight to wind and solar. Right. And, in Canada, where I am in Ontario, right, we've got a power grid that we've been using for 60, 70 years that was designed to last for 40 years. So, these folks are going to move quick, right? And they're going to show us the way. I love it. I dig it. I'm keeping an eye on it. I say this is one to watch, right? If you were excited about Hedera being used for these kind of settlement layer, payment rail, banking use cases across multiple currencies, this is it. This is the one to watch. This is the first one, right? So I'd check this out. And just real quick, too, another note on this is something that Carmel, CEO of EM Tech, said was, it's very likely that before we see a CBDC, we are going to see a government-backed stablecoin. And this kind of furthers that narrative where we've got WiCoin, which is a settlement layer. And so these things are starting to happen, right? These pathways that have been outlined by the players putting these things into motion. Shocker, it's starting to play out. So WiPay, keep an eye on it. Something else to keep an eye on is the mainnet. I'm going to check it out right now. And for reference, I mean, we had the step function on the mainnet where we went from low double digits to hundreds of transactions per second, 40, 50 million transactions a day in mid-January. And we've seen a couple dips, but we've maintained that, hundreds of transactions. Now, when I go, I just loaded it up. And we're rocking at over 500 transactions per second. So to me, and to a lot of people in the Hedera community, your brain kind of goes like, what's changed, right? Like, what's going on? The first thing that my mind comes to is, okay, Avery Dennison at my IO use case, obviously it's opt-in for a lot of their customers. Are more and more of their customers opting in to use Hedera? That would make sense because nothing on the mainnet has shown some kind of new variable to this, right? It's largely been at my IO Avery Dennison. So naturally, it may seem that more clients are starting to come online with the AMIO use case. That is the most logical explanation for the TPS boost. And the other thing too that's interesting is the account that pays for the transactions for the AMIO use case was refilled with HBAR on March 2nd. And I've seen some conversations around this, right? People have asked, when the HBAR Foundation stops funding the account that's paying for the transactions, that are generated by the AMIO use case from Avery Dennison, what will be the impact of that, right? That means that Avery Dennison is going to have to purchase hundreds of thousands of HBAR on a regular basis to power this use case, which is great. But right now, the HBAR Foundation is footing that bill. In my mind, when I think about this use case and also the foundation funding transaction payments for all sorts of use cases, to me, I also kind of look at that as a roundabout way of the HBAR Foundation transferring HBAR back to the treasury and to staking participants. Because when you really think about it, when the HBARs, let's say the HBAR Foundation sends, 750,000 HBAR to the ATMA.io account that is paying for the transactions for that use case. And over a 20-day period, it gobbles up, 500,000 HBAR to pay for that. Where does that HBAR go? Right? It goes back to the treasury. It goes to staking participants. It goes to account 800. So then where does that HBAR go from there? It probably goes back to the HBAR Foundation eventually. So it's a really interesting thing. I'm starting to think more and more about the cycle of an HBAR, right? HBARs cycle through the system. And also too, we talk about, when is all these billions of HBAR going to leave the treasury and go into circulation? Never. Right? There's always going to be HBAR coming back coming back and going to staking participants and all these different types of things and funding these use cases. And it'll never be a situation where Hedera in the future wouldn't, juice up the foundation a little more or something like that. Like these things work through the system. They go around and around and around. So I don't think it's a case of, when is this stuff going to be expended? When is it out? When do we run out? When do we get to the end of the line? I don't think that's the case, right? For me, it's about how quickly can we get this stuff cycling through the system? How quickly can we get this merry-go-round running? Because what that says to me is an active ecosystem. of, a lot of transactions and a lot of activity. How quick can we get an HBAR to the treasury, out to the ecosystem, flooded in, flowing through, back to the treasury, back out to the ecosystem? I know it doesn't work that way. You can't track an HBAR, but I've just been thinking about that recently with these topics about, the treasury and HBARs being released and the foundation paying for use cases and all this kind of stuff. What goes around comes around. Also, too, Governing Council meeting, January 11th, had a attendee, May Lam. So what's interesting here is Danny, who I see as, people call me the Hashgraph newsman. Danny's actually the Hashgraph newsman. He's always doing these threads of these deep dives. And he recently pointed out, he said, he put out a tweet, he screenshotted the council meeting minutes and the attendees. May Lam was there, and he said, quote, "Last but not least is the blockchain, the DLT, and the Web3 innovation beyond the cons, beyond the cryptocurrencies. So as mentioned by Stephen on the ESG agenda, or even along the value chain." And May Lam is the CIO of the Australian Payments Plus. We've heard a lot about Australian Payments Plus. I mean, we just had someone calling in from Australia from yesterday. It's not even Sunday yet in Australia. And, when we look at what's happening over there, we're starting to see some big moves being made. And May is from FPOS. FPOS is, when we look at if I go to Australian Payments Plus website, we look at the future of payments and the partners, FPOS is right there. And we've seen tweets from Rob at the HBAR Foundation about these different things and what's happening in Australia. And, there's so much going on. And if we keep going through here, I believe it was actually, that's Brian up there. So at Davos, at the Hedera house, or Brett McDowell, sorry, not Brian, Brett McDowell, who's the head of the board at Hedera, was giving a quick talk and, quote, "Our capabilities include," oh no, this isn't Brian. Hold on. Who is this? It doesn't even say who it is. It looks like Brian. I apologize, Brian. It's a bald guy. So I thought it was you, or sorry, Brett. I thought it was Brett. What the hell am I even talking about? Basically, someone from Australian Payments Plus said, quote, "Our capabilities include Australia's domestic debit network, real-time payments, infrastructure, secure bill payments, digital identity exchange, QR code payments and experiences, and open wallet solutions." And I mean, this is stuff that is, plugged right into Hedera. And then we've got Rob Allen from the Sustainable Impact Fund at the HBAR Foundation, who says the following. And I mean, geez, I apologize for butchering that last bit there. My God. Rob says, quote, "Australian Payments Plus is the new merged organization that includes FPOS, Now Payments Platform, NPP, and BPay, the Australian Bill Payment Scheme. This is the entire Aussie payments industry." And Rob said this on January 28th. So, and we've talked about that before. And, the long short of this is things are happening in Australia. It's clear. I mean, we just talked to David from FSCO about, bringing these different payment rails that include MasterCard and all these different types of things, and, supply chain tracking and all these different things. Like Australia, what is going on over there? It's so exciting. It's a big reason why I asked myself, is it all coming together? Because my eyes, and I think a lot of folks' eyes, are on the Australians Payment Plus use case. And this is what this is all about. And we've got, just before we move on, what this piece says to me is, on these Hedera Governing Council meetings, the involvement and the participation just is continuing to increase. And to me, it kind of shows that what we've heard from Mance, right, CEO over at Swirlds and ex-CEO of Hedera, founder of Hedera, co-founder of Hedera. What he said was initially governing council members way back in the day would join the governing council, but not really understand what their use case was going to be. It was kind of a point of discovery. Now new governing council members join the council and they have a decent idea of what their use case is going to be. A good example is the most recent governing council member, Dell, very clearly has a vision for their edge computing use case on Hedera. And what I'm starting to see here is a lot of these original governing council members are starting to open up a little bit, make some moves, bring on some new attendees, have a little bit more clarity about what exactly they're going to be building. And this is what this tells me about FPOS and the, Australian Payments Plus stuff. And I mean, we even saw, what was that other QR code payments use case? Oh, I can't remember what that was. But there was a use case that went live with digital wallets, scanning QR codes, running payments through. Again, another Australian use case, I believe affiliated with FPOS. So that's big. And it's starting to come together. And as we all know, too, the next quarterly governing council meeting is going to be taking place at the Google Cloud headquarters in California, which is crazy. That's another signal to me that participation in all those different types of things continue to increase. We got two pieces of news from HashPack. One was earlier this week. HashPack will be a strategic partner for Citadel Wallet. A couple episodes ago, I had Citadel Wallet on the show. Go back and listen to that episode. It was great. Awesome talk. Learned a lot about what they're working on. And HashPack becoming a strategic partner. So this is big. And something that, a key point from that interview that I had with Citadel Wallet, aka HBAR to the moon, was that when you have a hardware wallet, it's going to need a counterpart, right? It's going to, like when you have a ledger device, right? You need to use some kind of software wallet with that. It kind of works together with something. And Citadel Wallet was talking about how, they would be leveraging HashPack and integrating with HashPacks in a similar way to Ledger. And now as strategic partners, I think that integration is going to go so much deeper because as we know, Citadel Wallet is going to support all transaction types that the Hedera network supports, all different assets, right? Like we've got fungible tokens, we've got non-fungible tokens, NFTs, all those different types of things on a hardware wallet. So when you have that kind of tight integration and the software side of things, right? The hot wallet, the HashPack wallet, helping inform some of those decisions and vice versa. To me, it just really makes things exciting. And to my mind, it re-highlights this conversation around cross-chain versus native Hashgraph, right? A great example of this is DeFi protocols, right? We've got Saucer Swap and others that are based off of Uniswap, right? That aren't really right down to the layer one. But then we also have dexes like HBAR Suite that are going to be, doing their smart node stuff, and they're not going to be using smart contracts and all those different types of things. So they're building right down to the hash graph, but it means that they're not going to be super compatible with other networks. So it's this trade-off. And when it comes to wallets, you go, oh, can I have a wallet where I can hold HBAR and my Ethereum? And you can have that, but also you have wallets like HashPack that, again, really are focused on getting as much out of the hash graph as possible and going right down to that layer one and leveraging everything that Hedera can do. And of course, there are trade-offs, but the upside is you can really experience Hashgraph to its full potential. And when you pull back, you really start to see the contrast between blockchain and Hashgraph. And now when you start to have a hardware wallet that's taking that same approach and hyper focusing on Hashgraph specifically and willing to make those tough product decisions and those trade-offs, the upside to that is going to be really exciting. So HashPack, Citadel Wallet, strategic partnership, bada bing, bada boom. I love it. Also, a little bit of a cheeky tweet from Tyler, CTO of HashPack. Tyler, I know you're listening. I'm not going to bug you. I know you're probably busy working on stuff, but I mean, if you want to talk to this, just request to speak. I'd love to have you up. But Tyler tweeted out, quote, "Hey, Hedera NFT creators, I highly suggest enabling auto association or associating the popular tokens on your royalty treasury accounts." What does that mean? So what I pieced together in my mind is version 2 of HashPack Secure Trade, right? I've had Tyler as a guest on the show from HashPack. We talked about Secure Trade, and I asked him some simple questions. I was like, okay, let me run through a couple scenarios. Can I trade an NFT for some sauce, right? And he said, yeah, sure. That's exciting. Then I asked, can I trade an NFT for another NFT? And he's like, yeah, sure. Great. And I was like, okay, crazy. And then I asked, could I trade some, Dovu for Grell for something? And he's like, yeah. So in my mind, if HashPack is suggesting to NFT creators to associate other types of tokens to their royalty wallets. My question is, and again, Tyler, if you want to answer this question, feel free to request to speak. But you may be keeping this a bit of a secret. My suspicion is that will there be royalty payments paid out in these other assets? For example, when someone were to trade an NFT of mine, like a pixel rug, for some other asset, will I get royalties in like Dovu or something? I'm really, really curious, to figure out what that is. And looks like the call has been answered. We've got Tyler from HashPack. What is this tweet about? I'm thinking it's about Secure Trade version 2. Am I completely wrong, or am I getting warm? Am I getting warmer with this?
Hey, you're completely right.
Ding, 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 ding. I would use the Twitter Spaces like sound effects, but I find that they're like 10 times too loud, so I'm not going to use them. But yeah, so okay, let's break this open a bit. So why are NFT creators going to want to associate stuff like Sauce and Dovu and whatever to their treasury accounts? Like, what's going on with that?
So if your NFT has a 10% royalty and somebody trades your NFT for some sauce, 10% of the sauce will be given to the NFT creator.
So that's crazy. So, okay, let me wrap my brain around this, because this is really exciting. So obviously, as we know, in this case, atomic swaps are managed by the protocol and royalties are managed by the protocol. But I know that the royalties programmed onto a token ID itself. We're going to get a little technical here, but the royalties programmed onto a token ID that are the royalties executed by the Hedera protocol, those are all denominated. Well, I guess they aren't denominated in HBAR. It's just a percentage. That's interesting. I didn't even think it's literally just a percentage. So what you're saying is it's handled in the same way.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've got the documentation here. Let me just read exactly what it says. The royalty fee charged is a fraction of the value exchanged for the NFT. And so this can be any fungible token swapped for an NFT. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So what you're saying is this is kind of baked into the network from, I'll say day one, but obviously like this was kind of added to the network at some point, but this isn't a new addition. This is just how royalties are programmed to function. It doesn't necessarily have to be HBAR.
Exactly. Yeah. It's always been kind of how royalties worked. It's just nobody really had the ability to swap a token for an NFT. So I just don't think people are very aware of it, but yeah, it was kind of how it's always worked.
That's so exciting. So basically, the big call to action for NFT creators is associate the different assets that you'd like to be receiving as royalties, right? Like maybe people are going to be trading your NFTs via secure trade version 2 in Sauce or Dovu or whatever. I mean, one of the scenarios we talked about is you could trade, an NFT for some Sauce, some Dovu, and some HBAR. And whatever that is bundled together, 10% of those assets are going to end up in your project's treasury account. So that's going to be really interesting. Like really up until now, it's really just been HBAR. That's been the lifeblood of the NFT ecosystem, but that could expand to other assets, including USDC. Do you see, marketplaces taking advantage of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely, we're going to see, especially USDC, right? Like it makes sense to start pricing things in kind of dollar values. Like, once you start getting into like purchasing NFTs with credit cards and like that kind of a streamlined flow, I mean, essentially if a token has a US value, like a dollar value, why not just accept any token if it's an equivalent value for a NFT, right? You can go a lot of ways, but I definitely think at least USDC is going to start getting a little more popular. Yeah.
I love that. That's huge. Tyler, I appreciate you jumping up and breaking that down for me. Did you want to give a shout out or mention anything just before I pop you back down?
I don't think so. Did you touch on kind of the scam stuff going on lately with the...
Oh yeah, that's right. I got that up on my queue. I mean, yeah, that's another thing. So somebody bought Google Ads for a cleverly worded HashPack URL that obviously brings you to a website that's going to try to take the stuff inside of your wallet. And that's a whole new level, right? Obviously, scammers are starting to see the return on investment for this community. And it's worth noting that a lot of people in the Hedera ecosystem, it is their first foray into crypto. They haven't really experienced a lot of the tomfoolery that happens on other networks. So I feel like this is going to blindside a lot of people, and I think that awareness needs to be brought about this type of stuff. So was there anything you wanted to talk about on this specifically? Because I think that your insights would be really helpful. Yeah,
so it's definitely a new type of scam for the kind of Hedera network and HashPack. It caught us off guard. We were like, this guy is saying that he entered his seed phrase into like a website that looks like HashPack, and he said it popped up an error that like we don't have in HashPack, so that set off some red flags, and we started doing some research onto what that could have been. And yeah, we came across I think we found 2 sites that were quite closely mimicking HashPack, and it basically looks like you're importing an account to HashPack. Like they kind of recreated the exact screen of entering your seed phrase to import an account, and it's like the URL is like one letter off with a different. It's like dot something. And yeah, it's very like it's well done, I gotta say, but you just got to be really careful out there with this stuff. They're getting pretty creative with these scams, and like every time somebody reaches out to me being like, my HBAR is gone, like what happened? My stomach just sinks, and I hate it. Like these people are just awful that are doing this to people, and it's hard to combat, right? Like you see. We probably get like 3 to 5 Twitter accounts banned a week that are impersonating us, and it's just endless, They're obviously finding some sort of success here, like if they keep doing it, and it's a bit of a testament to like how the community is growing and like the space is growing, and it just sucks to see it,
Yeah, there unfortunately is a correlation of stolen HBAR to network growth, and really any other network too. And the key thing that I think that, breaks my heart too is I see so many incredible community, Twitter spaces that are these onboarding spaces. I was actually just on one of these with, Binks, who is part of the Pixelland NFT project. Shout out to those guys. And she's been doing some incredible onboarding spaces where they'll have people literally join the spaces, never heard of Hedera. They're excited about it. They'll open up a HashPack. Some folks in the community will throw them 50 HBAR. They'll grab some NFT on Zeus. They have a great time. But a part of that journey is probably them, I've got to get a HashPack. So they maybe Google HashPack or something. And that could be the point where they click on one of those ads. Now, hopefully most folks are using ad blockers, but that's sometimes what can happen is when you're doing these word of mouth things, or you're saying to somebody, oh yeah, grab a HashPack, go to the HashPack website. What do you do first? You go to Google. And that's where this really breaks down, right? People can purchase, fraudulent ad space. And that's how we break trust in kind of advertisements and stuff. Like Google ads can't even touch the amount of garbage I see on like Twitter ads when I'm scrolling through and stuff. It's only a matter of time that we see some kind of false Twitter ad for, something Hedera related. These kinds of things happen. So, maybe like what would be a good piece of advice or a good tip for not just people new to the ecosystem that are trying to get a HashPack, but for people in the ecosystem like myself that are trying to onboard people to Hedera? Obviously, a key part of that is, getting them into a Hedera wallet like HashPack. Like, in my mind, like, what's the best call to action to give them instead of going, go to the HashPack website, knowing nowadays they might not get to the actual real HashPack website, right? Like, what would you say to somebody?
Yeah, great question. I guess sharing the correct website would probably be the easiest way to kind of ensure that they're going to the right spot. I don't think that these ads will be long-lived. Like new ones may pop up, but we'll get them banned pretty quickly as soon as we kind of hear about them. Like if anyone notices any of these, please send us a message. And we'll assemble the army to report them. But just linking the official official channels, I guess, and double checking, triple checking before entering your seed phrase anywhere. I guess that's kind of the lucky thing for onboarding is like these sites are targeting people that have a seed phrase already. So, if you don't have an account, you're probably going to be okay unless you enter like a random seed phrase you have from another chain. That might get you, but I don't think that'll really happen. But yeah, it's a kind of constantly moving target to stop this stuff.
Right. Yeah. That would be the next level is if one of these scam websites actually allows someone to create a Hedera wallet. That would be brutal. Well, Tyler, I really appreciate you popping up, and I'm excited about secure trade. Like, just the fact that USDC is going to hopefully start moving through the NFT ecosystem a little more with this and some of these other assets. Like, I think that it's going to definitely add a whole new color to the NFT ecosystem and just, arguably over the counter, trading and stuff like that of various assets and different things. Like it's, really, really cool. So I appreciate you coming up. Was there anything else that you wanted to just quickly shout out or tell people to check out?
Not off the top of my head. Keep an eye out for our next release. I think it's actually live on Android. I think I accidentally pushed that live earlier, but yeah, keep an eye out in the next day or two for the Secure Trade V2 release.
Wow, Secure Trade V2 in a couple days. I'm excited. That's awesome. Buying and selling NFTs for other assets, for other NFTs, truly for the first time trading, right? Trading NFTs for other NFTs. That's going to that's going to be fun. Like that's so nostalgic. Like, if you've maybe got some Hgraph punks or something and you're like, oh, I want yours and you want mine, just being able to swap NFTs, like that alone is going to be so cool.
It's going to be cool. We kind of designed it around like a RuneScape or like World of Warcraft trading screens,
right.
It'll be very kind of familiar to a lot of people, the interface. So yeah, I'm excited for people to play with it. And yeah.
Rock on. Well, Tyler, I appreciate it. I'm just going to boot you down back to listeners. But I mean, yeah, HashPack secure trade sounds like it's coming next week. Let's get going. Let's start trading NFTs. Actually trading NFTs, not just moving NFTs around. This one for that one. Let's make it happen. And also get some sauce or Dovu or whatever else as royalties. Royalties up to the next level. Two announcements from Hgraph.io. Hgraph.io, of course, the brainchild of Turtle Moon Command Center, announces that they will be partnering with Upside Co-op and PiFi, which is really exciting because the use cases that Upside Co-op and PiFi are working on is regarding DAOs, right? And how they can be legally and regulatory compliant. And you accomplish that through a co-op, right? So you'd have a community around a project on a layer 1 or a layer 2 or some DLT, exchanging value and doing different activities. And then you've maybe got a corporation, and then you create a co-op. You basically give the co-op ownership of a part of the corporation. You give the community ownership of the co-op, and you can move things around. It's really great. That's exciting. They got some really cool, exciting things coming, and they're going to be leveraging Hgraph.io, which of course is a GraphQL interface for the Hashgraph. I mean, Hgraph.io enables a ton of different development for a lot of folks on the network, which is exciting. And also they announced they're going to be launching a mirror node REST API, which will be available before the end of March. So, I mean, if you're developing on Hedera, and you got to be able to query stuff from the mainnet, check out Hgraph.io from my pal Patches. It's good stuff. The Hashgraph Association, or what are they called? The Hashgraph, the Hashgraph Association is committing 100 million euros to support fintech and blockchain startups with the aim of empowering young entrepreneurs to adopt digital assets and DeFi. So the Coin Journal has an article about this published on the 28th of February. And they've partnered with Orange, and they are going to promote digital assets and blockchain adoption in Morocco. Other than funding, the partnership will promote education and innovation in emerging technologies in Morocco across the region. So this is another accelerator move, right? And I think that the Hashgraph Association had representatives out of Dovu. I mean, these guys are heavy hitters. I know a couple people that they're also working with as well. And they're kind of the same vibe as the HBAR Foundation, right? I mean, we've got these different grant funding bodies within the ecosystem. The Hashgraph Association is one major one. So I'd say, keep your eyes on the Hashgraph Association. It seems that what they're doing has been pretty successful. And we got another 100 million euros in the pot, right? And this is, again, innovation happening outside of North America. This is a big thing. The adoption of Hedera is truly going to need to be global. And there are major hubs and economies and movements, artistic movements, financial movements, all these different things happening in, like we talked about, the Caribbean and Africa, India, the Philippines. Like, these are areas that are going to be doing the big innovative moves that are going to, reinvigorate a lot of us folk. And I think that's where we need to be looking. We need to be looking outward. 'Cause as crazy as things are over here, it's also crazy out there in a different way. It's very, very exciting stuff. Also, too, Dovu announces updates to its carbon purchase multipliers. They've increased their temporary carbon purchase multipliers. So when you purchase carbon offsets on Dovu, you're going to see an increase in the APY bonuses across the board. So if you're staking your Dovu and you're making moves, check that out right now, because you could be making your moves a little more movier, to put it very technically. Going back to Rob Allen from the HBAR Foundation, head of the Sustainable Impact Fund. We've been talking about Rob quite a bit. Rob has been very vocal. Rob has been doing some cool stuff. So he put out a post on LinkedIn in response to a post on LinkedIn from Not Centralized. Not Centralized has been selected for the Reserve Bank of Australia's CBDC initiative. So Not Centralized says, quote, "We're excited to announce that we've been named as one of the pilot projects for the Reserve Bank of Australia's CBDC initiative with the Digital Finance CRC. Our project, which involves trade flows for construction payments in an aged care facility, will be one of the first amongst other projects here." So that's exciting. Rob Allen tweets, "Delighted that the great team at Not Centralized were among the few selected to join. And even more delighted they have chosen to build on Hedera." So it's kind of crazy. Like, we've talked about multiple use cases in this capacity, including CBDCs, just today, right? Is it all coming together? According to Rob, it may be. Also, too, Rob recently appeared alongside Nigel Dobson, the banking services portfolio lead at ANZ. We talked about ANZ previously as well. It's clear that traditional DLTs might not be able to cut it, because Neil Dobson said in this interview, being interviewed by Rob Allen from the HBAR Foundation, he said, the network of choice, referring to Ethereum, has been tested, and he is not a fan. Right? We're starting to see a bit of a trend, especially when it comes to the sustainability angle of things and also the governance angle of things. It can't be understated that, as Lehman put it, there is a crisis of governance in the Web3 space. We just had David on at the beginning of the show from FSCO talking about how when they are going to be developing these payment rails that facilitate MasterCard payments that are event-based, they like Hedera because Hedera is the adults in the room. So for better or for worse, Hedera is the adult in the room. And I mean, when we see folks like Nigel who are, at ANZ and we've seen this thread, right, of people talking about, oh, we were using this or we were using that, or we've been looking at Ethereum or we've been looking at that, and it doesn't cut it. And then we found Hedera. And I think that, I can't remember who said this, but a lot of these major organizations and companies and governments are not going to be, investing or looking at just one DLT. They're not going to put all their eggs in one basket. Also, we see governing council members on Hedera running nodes for other layer 1s and 2s, right? So that's the other side of this, right? So the second thing is, a lot of these pilot programs, R&D initiatives, all these different types of things, this tech debt that's being taken on by these companies was started before Hedera was a public network, or very early on before Hedera was, let's say, open sourced or had that minimum viability, right? They're still on that track. And I think that in this case specifically, when we look at Nigel from ANZ, they're at a cycle in their R&D where they were looking at Ethereum. They've reached the end of this R&D and they've determined that it's not the right fit. And they see the other options out there, and Hedera seems like it might be the right fit. It doesn't mean that they're abandoning other networks. It doesn't mean that they're only throwing in with Hedera. I don't know if that is the case. It could be. But it does mean that some of these initiatives at some of these organizations and Fortune 550s and Fortune 10s, they are reaching that point where they're having to make concession after concession after concession, and it's too much. And they're realizing that they're not going to have to do that on a network like Hedera. And at some point, they're going to have to admit that maybe they were wrong and maybe they wasted a bunch of money, and that's tough. It's tough to convince shareholders that, listen, this initiative we took on was not successful, and maybe we spent millions or tens of millions of dollars, and we have to go in a different direction and try it all over again. And that's part of this process. And they're going to continue getting closer to Hedera. In this case, we saw that. So this interview clip, I highly encourage people to watch it. It's in the thread pinned to the top of the Spaces. Check it out. Also, too, I'm not going to dive into this. We don't have time. It's already 8:30. It's so hard to keep these under an hour and a half. But I encourage people to read the Sunday research thread published on the Hedera community subreddit by user Troy ST8. And, you know, they publish regular Sunday research threads. I really appreciate these. They talk about, on this post specifically, they're talking about universal digital coupons, obviously referring to the 8112 standard, Coupon Bureau. The key thing here is, where is it? They mentioned something. Let me do a Control F here. Could have sworn there was something that said June or July. But lots of good insights here. One thing, too, that I wanted to just highlight in this Sunday research thread. I mean, go read the whole thing. It's really great. A lot of stuff I've talked about before, just in relation to coupons, but go check it out. Great refresher. But one that's highlighted in this is a forgotten use case, which is Canopy Right. We've talked about Canopy Right on the show before at length. It's something that I really love. It is a cannabis use case that helps people that need to catalog and cultivate that intellectual property for the different cannabis strains that they produce and sell to people and all these different things. It is a use case running on Hedera that creates this this system of provenance for cannabis strains that you literally bag and tag the actual cannabis and prove ownership and secure that and create that, those guarantees and trust of various strains of cannabis and allow these deals to be done for another brand to leverage a strain of cannabis and have those royalties, you could say, paid out appropriately. So it's this really robust network for this cannabis industry. And I'd agree, it's kind of forgotten. I mean, it's really exciting. And I'll just read real quick before we move on to the rest of our stories here. Troy ST8 says in their thread, quote, "I have not heard anything about this use case in years, and thought it was dead in the water. But no, they just launched. I'm thinking it had to do with maybe looser regulations. Who knows? They seem to be in beta now, but they do have an entire page dedicated to how Hedera is involved. It actually looks pretty well done for how quiet everything has been. I think it's a really great platform for the cannabis community to share their strains and even get paid. I think it's great, but it goes to show that the use cases being built on Hedera aren't always going to be served up to this community because it's not a use case for us. It's not a DeFi use case. It's not something for the Hedera community. This is something for the cannabis community, and they don't know what Hedera is. They just need it to work. So I'd encourage people, if there's a use case that you are really excited about that was building on Hedera and you maybe have forgotten about it or you haven't heard a lot about it, go search it up, check it out. They're probably doing something that you had no idea about because they're not focused on keeping up with the Hedera community and all those different types of things. They have their own communities, and those communities maybe have no clue what a DLT is. They just need the thing to work properly. Follow up with those use cases. Take a look. What have they been up to? In this case, this was a use case that I thought was forgotten, and it's not. But a use case that was forgotten in this scenario, and oh boy, I was miffed. Also, too, I got 2 gripes for Hedera. I have some complaints with Hedera. My first complaint has to do with leaving out AdsDAX from a list of use cases, but we'll talk about that in a minute. The other thing that I'm miffed about, that I'm rightfully pissed about, is Hedera tweeted out LOL recently. I actually think it was yesterday, maybe Friday, can't remember. The Hedera account tweeted out LOL. That's it. People lost their minds. Everybody was going, what's happening? What's going on with the social media guy running the account? Who gave Lehman the Twitter login? We didn't know what was going on. I mean, the Hedera Twitter account's been kind of going off the rails a little bit in a great way. Obviously, Hedera is owned and governed by, major corporations and quote unquote adults in the room. And that can be boring sometimes. And when you have an account like that with, well over 250,000 followers tweet out LOL, it's strange. But again, putting on my marketing and branding hat again, this is a common tactic used by major brands that have over 250,000 followers on Twitter. And it's what we would call a punchline tweet. A punchline tweet is something that is non-contextual, right? It doesn't have any context. It's just LOL. And what it's there for is for the community to use. And how I used it was I quote tweeted it and I said, my friend, but Ethereum and Bitcoin are more decentralized than Hedera. And then me. And then LOL, but the Hedera tweet. I mean, it's terrible to explain a meme, but it's that punchline to a tweet. And it's a great punchline because when you see it, right, it's in context like, oh, LOL, but then you go, oh, that's a tweet from Hedera. And it's just, it kind of exploded and it went out there and it was really great and fun and all those different types of things. And they deleted it. It was so fun. It was so nice. It brought a smile to my face. And it was deleted. Maybe it was that one grumpy governing council member, right? Who knows who it was. But it does seem like there is a bit of a delightful struggle happening between the governing council or whomever and the brainiac social media person at Hedera. And, in my mind, I'm kind of like, why delete that? It's funny. It's cool. I mean, I can get it. I can understand why it can sometimes, that could come off wrong because, you look at, again, at the top of the show, we were talking to David from FSCO and he's like, the reason we moved from MasterCard's Provenance blockchain and chose Hedera was because Hedera are the adults in the room. Do the adults in the room tweet out LOL without context? Probably not. Maybe it was a good idea to delete it. But I'm losing it. I'm upset. That was a great tweet. And it ruined my quote tweet. That was getting a lot of likes. I was on a roll. I was on a roll, guys. I run a couple Twitter accounts for a couple use cases out there, and I got my NFT projects and stuff like that. It was a good joke. It was fun. When that tweet got deleted, mine got ruined. What am I going to do? The other thing I'm upset about is, Znobia tweets out a great tweet that, says now is a great time for people to be reminded that, the Hedera consensus service, is actual real transactions. There's a lot of FUD out there when people look at the transactions on the network and they're very high and they go, listen, it's the same as Solana. It's a bunch of fugazi. It's not real. It's made up. It's wizzy-wazzy, right? And it's not true. Each of those transactions happening on the Hedera network represents value. There's value being transactions on the network. There's payments being made 500 times every second, right? There's a payment being made on the Hedera network 500 times on average every second. This isn't a consensus algorithm. No, this is a consensus service. So we've talked about that at length, all those different types of things. Maybe they should rebrand it. I don't know. But the point is here is they tweeted out a blog post that explains this, right? And there was a part of the article that says, well, if they're not being used in network consensus, what are these transactions? And they list different use cases that run a lot of transactions through the Hedera consensus service. And they list Atma.io, Hala Systems, a few others. One obvious omission is AdsDAX, which is so insane because AdsDAX is a use case that accounts for almost half of the transactions on the network. Now, I understand that there are a billion new transactions every month on the network. That's huge. AdsDAX accounts for 2 billion transactions maybe. But still, where would the network be without AdsDAX? In 2021, in 2022, when Hedera was celebrating 1 billion transactions, when Hedera was celebrating 2 billion transactions, and they were probably leveraging that KPI to onboard new governing council members, to entice new use cases, to bring levity to the network. That was AdsDAX. Why leave them out of this article? I don't know. It's I'll say here, it's bullshit. But I will say, in this, Ryan Davies, who, is from AdsDAX, was, tweeted this out and, alerted the community of this and, rightfully so. Right. And I think a good response was left. So a response from none other than Rob Allen, who I think is he's really stepping up to the plate here, which I really appreciate in the community. Rob Allen says, when the histories of Hedera are written, AdsDAX will always be seen as the primary catalyst for bringing this next generation decentralized internet into the public consciousness, and AdsDAX deserves a place in the Web3 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Well, Rob, does AdsDAX deserve a place in this article? Update the article. The article was published on the 2nd. It's only been up for a couple days. Update it. Update the article. Add AdsDAX. We got the use case here. We got, Atma, of course. Billions of transactions, tip of the hat. But like all these other ones, like Hala Systems and blah, whatever. What transactions have they run, right? AdsDAX did billions. Put them up there. Get them up on there. Why aren't they up there? What's going on? I'm going to lose my mind. I'm getting too upset. I love you, Rob, though. You did nothing wrong. But yeah, shout out to Ryan Davies. Shout out to AdsDAX. Shout out to Yamgo. I mean, these are good people, right? These are good people that built a use case that, and this was an advertising use case. AdsDAX was a use case that was live in 2021 that served advertisements on websites via the Hedera network and eliminated advertising fraud, all these different types of things. Heck, it could be a solution to the scams that we were talking about with Tyler from HashPack just earlier. This fake Google ad that was bought on Google, linking to a fake HashPack website, stealing people's HBARs. AdsDAX could fix that. AdsDAX, billions of transactions, amazing use case advertising. Get them on the article. Update the article. I've had enough. Update the article. I'll move on before I lose my mind. HashAxis, has an update. I don't quite know what to think about it. I'll read out their announcement. New feature introducing Ava, the first custom AI stable diffusion model integrated with Hedera and powered by HBAR. Provide Ava with image prompts and use HBAR to create and download digital artwork. Optionally mint your unique AI art as Hedera NFT. So a lot of folks have their own opinions and thoughts on AI artwork. We could, a lot of people want less of it. A lot of people think it's really cool. All those different types of things. Let me see what the response has been to this announcement from HashAxis. Honestly, kind of lukewarm. Not a ton of engagement on this announcement. So here's the thing. I don't know if this is a big deal for the community, but what I will say is this does seem like a really cool tech demo. Like when we talk about demonstrating to new people cool things you can do on the Hedera network, the ability to go to this webpage, right, hashaxis.com/AVA, AVA, and type in an image prompt, connect your HashPack or Blade wallet, generate an AI art NFT. It's yours, and then you can mint it and you can sell it. This is a really fun, great way to kind of dive into the network and instantly have a cool moment. And then, thoughts on AI artwork aside, I don't think this is anything the community was asking for, but again, the more cool things that we can give people to do when they're hopping on to Hedera, the better. I just bring it up because if you're trying to get someone on board to Hedera or maybe a creator or something, and you want to show them kind of what the process of NFT stuff is like, hey, this might be really cool. So check it out. And geez, what else we got going on here? We got another thread from, let me see if I have time for this. This looks like a bit of a juicy one. Do we have time for this? Let me see. Oh my God, it's almost 9:00 over here in Ottawa. I got my fiance waiting for me to watch Last of Us. Or actually, I don't think Last of Us airs for another 20 minutes. So I think I'm okay. I think we got time. I think it's going to be okay, guys. We can do this. Danny tweets out, the founder of Abysmal, what's the name of this use case? Abysmal_DG is the Twitter username. And there is a game called Astronova. Yeah, okay, here we go. So, founder tweets or says, quote, the reason why we went ahead with Hedera was we got introduced thanks to one of our devs who was working with Google. He was working on a very secret project with Hedera for sustainability. What? What's that about? That was divulged on a Q&A that Astronova and these folks were a part of. So Danny's thread talks about this use case, which is really great. But the hook here is Google is working on a very secret project with Hedera for sustainability. Huh? Lehman mentioned a Fortune 10 use case. Google was rumored to be that use case. Google is a governing council member. Google is hosting the next governing council meeting. According to these folks, Google was working on a top secret project for Hedera in regards to sustainability. My goodness, I'm not going to spend much more time on that. I'll spin my wheels. But just for the radar, guys, that's a breadcrumb. That's enough breadcrumbs for a whole loaf, in my opinion. Saucer Swap, they're putting out a bunch of teasers for a UI refresh with a bunch of different features. Last week we talked about a teaser they put out of the swapping interface. They put out another update, which it appears they're building in a light mode, right? So Saucer Swap is dark mode, which is nice, but they've got light mode now. They're you can have it, brighten your day. And alongside the swapping interface, they're going to have charts so you can see trends in regards to volume, TVL, all these different types of things. So more tools for people to have insights before they hit the swap button, which is great. And I believe that those updates will be coming on the 7th. No, I should check the Saucer Swap Twitter. I don't want to be incorrect with this date, but they are launching a UI refresh on the 7th this week. Think about that. This week, community updates. We've got HashPack Secure Trade version 2 coming, and we've got a Saucer Swap UI refresh coming. Big news. And, Jesus, that we got through it. That was my last story. So, another week behind us and another week ahead. A huge shout out to everybody listening live on Twitter Spaces right now, and an extra shout out to everyone listening to the recording on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you may find yourself. If you have a moment, give the show a rating and review on your favorite platform. It helps a lot. Thank you, David from FSCO, for hopping on the show. Thank you, Tyler from HashPack, for hopping on the show, helping me out with some of these news stories and insights. A lot of key things shared. I'm not going to harp on this too much, but of course we know that FSCO is going to be bringing some integrations for event-based payments via MasterCard to Hedera. I asked them about Visa, and they said no comment. That was interesting. Also, Tyler mentioning that the new version of HashPack is coming this week is big. He pushed the update live to Android by accident, so if you're on Android now, I think you might have access to Secure Trade version 2 early. Kind of cool. Is it all coming together? Feels like it. I still don't know, but it feels like it. Think about what we talked about today. It's big stuff. Like, the show this week was 2 hours long. When I started the show, I could barely fill an hour. Now I can barely keep it under 2 hours. So if that is an indicator, that should probably be the ultimate indicator of growth on the network. Can Brandon keep this show under 2 hours? The harder that gets to be, the faster this ecosystem is growing. And I think that something I was talking about, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, just my final thought to wrap things up is, again, we talk a lot about the price of HBAR, right? We talk a lot about what's happening with a bunch of different assets on other networks, or not other networks, sorry, on this network, on HTS, right? Like Dovu and Sauce and H-Suite and like whatever, and the prices of those various things, and the fact that they're all going down along with everything else in the stock market and whatever. But also the fact that the value on the network, right? The value on the network is going up. Great example, governing council member, we talked about this, DLA Piper has $500 million worth of securities tokenized on Hedera. If you want to talk about value, there's value right there. There's $500 million in value. And that keeps going up, right? Price of HBAR keeps going down. Value on the network keeps going up. I'll let you do the math. Is it all coming together? It feels like it, but I don't know, but it feels like it. More likely it is than not. And when you're looking at numbers, please, 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 more often than not right now, look at the numbers of the actual network, the transactions, the time to finality. What are the popular topic IDs on the network? All those different types of things. Open up the hood, crack open the engine, look at what's going on. Metrica is a great resource for that. I use that all the time. Don't worry about the price right now. Who cares? Who cares? Everything's in the pooper. We're seeing all sorts of scary news coming out about what could be happening next. What's the next shoe to drop? right? How long is this bear going to stay in hibernation? Who cares? You look at the actual network, crack open the hood, it's all up. Transactions up. TVL saw a little blip, but up. Everything's up. And final thing on that is, right, co-founder of Hedera, co-CEO of Swirlds, Mance, said, something to the effect of, all of those things going up on the network, that's not due to the governing council, right? That's due to the community, right? Remember that. Keep that in mind. So thank you for tuning in to Hashgraph News and Rumors, episode 67. Is it all coming together? Broadcast live on Twitter Spaces every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, and made available on all major podcast platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts, every Monday. Get all the info you need about the show and listen to past episodes at itsbrandond.com/HBAR. Make sure to join the Hashgraph enthusiast Twitter community to share your insights, ask questions, invite new friends. If you'd like to become a supporter of the show, feel free to send an HBAR donation to enthusiast.hbar using your Hedera wallet. I really appreciate everyone tuning in, and I'll see you live on Twitter Spaces next Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. For everyone listening now, I'm going to keep the spaces open as usual for a few more moments so everyone can follow each other and stay connected. If you see somebody that you know that you haven't talked to in a bit listening right now, clicking on their profile, send them a message, say, hey, what's up? How's it going? Maybe they got something new going on you should know about. If you see someone you don't know, take a moment now, click their profile, send them a message, say, what's up, right? If you're listening to this show, you've got something in common. Get connected. That's what this is all about. That's what Web3 is all about. And with that, hello, future. Goodbye, past.